this morning we're going to start, you can be turning over to John chapter 13. And as I was thinking about it, I thought the words we read this morning are perhaps the most radical words Jesus ever spoke. Now, I don't know about you, but in my mind sometimes I can go to Luke chapter 14, about 25 to 33, or Luke 9, 57 to 62, and John 6, and a bunch of other places and go, wow, this is some tough stuff Jesus said here. But the more I think about it, the more I believe what we're going to read this morning may perhaps be the most challenging and defining thing that Jesus said about what it means to be a disciple of His. So let's simply start and read it together. John chapter 13. And we'll start in verse 34. A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, all men will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. Now, in order to really understand what's happening here, I think it's really good to just step back from what Jesus just said and be reminded that there are two things that had happened in just the last seconds and minutes before Jesus says those words. Two of the most infamous things in the Bible, two of the things that mark some amazing things in the world had just happened. Do you remember what those are? Say one of them out. Okay, Jesus washed the disciples' feet. God in the flesh, carrying out a menial, dirty task, washing so much so that Peter said, "You will not wash my feet." And Jesus said, "If I don't, you'll have nothing to do with me." And Peter's like, "Well, then give me a bath." And then what was the other thing that had happened only seconds before this? Judas walks out of the room to go betray Jesus. Nobody's figured that out because nobody thought Judas, even though they had talked about it at what we call the Last Supper. And Jesus had said, the person whom I give this, that's who it is. And they still didn't believe that because after all, he's so loved and trusted. Why, he's the guy in charge of all the money for the ministry of Jesus. He must be going out to buy something for Jesus. And it's in that moment that Jesus shares this passage right here. He raises the standard. He doesn't in this passage just say, you'll be known by your love. Although, as disciples of Jesus, as Christians, we should be known by our love, right? Our love for our fellow man, love our enemies, love the world. But that's not what he says in this passage, is it? He said, in this world, you will be known by your love for each other. Right as Judas walks out the door to betray him, he stops him and he says, this is how the world is going to know about me. They're going to look at you. They're going to see a love so different. A family so tight that when they see you, they will see me. That's what is supposed to describe his family today, his church. I don't think Jesus ever had it in his mind. I think he had a vision for us and a gift to us that is so far beyond this idea of attend church. Or even, if it's worse than that, do I have to go? Are we going to go to church today? You see, what I think Jesus had in mind was, I'm going to challenge you with what it really means to follow me, and I'm going to give you something that is so far from that. A place that is so connected with love that you would never think, am I going to go? You would say, can I go now? I know it's only Sunday morning at 6 a.m., and I know most people won't show up till 9 or 10. Can we just go ahead and go? Kind of like, kids are at Christmas. Can't we just go ahead and open? That there was a vision that Jesus had, and it wasn't a have-to religion. Now, we know that the people of Jesus' day had seen religion. They had seen religion. It reminds me, I've got this old letter that I kept for a long, long time. It's, in my little file. And it's a letter from this lady her name was Maria. And it says, and I'll just paraphrase this. It says, my dearest Jimmy, I love you so, so, so much. You are the best thing that has ever happened to me in my life. You so graciously asked me to be your husband, and I am so, so, so sorry that I have broken off our engagement. I have made the biggest mistake of my life. Would you in any way please take me back? I love you, I love you, I love you. I'm so, so sorry. I can't live another day without you. Please take me back. Love, Maria. P.S. Congratulations on winning the lottery. The world has seen a lot of love like that, hasn't it? Religion has seen a lot of love like that. The people of Jesus' day had seen religion carried out like that. What's there for me? And Jesus comes along and he has this vision and he says, no, you're going to love in a way that the world looks at you and they know something is very, very different. I'm not sure if today's world is any more divided than the world was back in Jesus' day. Now, I know we believe and think, and I feel it a lot, and I'm sure you do too. This world is such a divided place. You can take 100 subjects. I could create division in this room right now. Just throw out one sentence, and I guarantee you I can get people's blood pressure up and some looks and this and that, be it something political or social or your ball team or whatever it is so easy to do. And isn't that what Jesus is saying? This is such a divided world. And it needs something different. It needs a picture of love like they've never seen before. And that is what it is going to mean to follow me. The world will know. So I've broken this down into 3 sections this morning. The first one is simply this. It is the vision of Jesus. This vision that, I don't know, as I pick this up, I go, I don't know. That might be the hardest thing in the Bible to do. But I don't believe Jesus just thought this was a pipe dream. I don't think he just thought, well, this is a nice lofty goal. I think Jesus actually meant it when he said, here's my plan for the world. When they see you, Triangle Church, they're going to knock your doors down. Because they will see a love that they can't understand. They don't relate to it. They've never seen anything like it. That's how they're going to know you're my disciples. Now, the second part of this then is, well, then what happens next? I mean, come on. It's a vision. It's a dream. This is great, Jesus. Whew, sounds like a lofty goal. But can't you just hear them now? You do realize, though, that what I'm working with here, I mean, we got Peter. Need I say any more? I mean, before this night's over, you've already said 3 times he's going to cuss about knowing you. And we all know how mouth first he can be. And boy, his opinion. I get it, Jesus. And the sons of thunder, James and John. I mean, do you understand the crowd I got to work with here? Oh, I know where we go. How easy would it have been for these guys to go, oh, yeah, sure, Jesus. That sounds like a great idea. But we're people, aren't we? So open up your Bibles with me for a minute, and let's go see what did happen. All right? And we're just going to peruse through the next little bit in the life of the church and see how this dream comes about. So we know what happens. Jesus dies that night. He's buried. He's raised. The next thing we hear about the disciples, after they had all denied Jesus and all run for their own necks, you're not exactly getting this great picture of, this family that's going to change the world. There's something in them, at least. As we find them in Acts chapter 1, they were together in an upper room. I don't know why that is. After all that had gone on, you would think they would have just gone, probably just a good time to part our ways, guys. We've all failed Jesus. He's dead. Maybe he's been raised. Some still doubted. What do you think? They at least had enough to be together. Then, of course, Pentecost happens and the church begins. And let's pick up the word from there and start reading. In Acts chapter 2, a very familiar verse, but I hope to call attention to a phrase that maybe we miss. Verse 42, they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the fellowship, to breaking of bread, and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe, and many wonders and miraculous signs were done by the apostles. All the believers were together and had everything in common. So they start acting like Jesus had told them to be. Selling their possessions and goods they gave to anyone as he had need. Every day they continued to meet together in the temple courts. I would ask you why. Was it just the amazing teachings that they were hearing? Probably not. They were loving the fellowship, the joy of being together. This love like many of them had not experienced. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts. It's beginning to sound like these are people who are loving each other in a way that the world wasn't accustomed to. And so we have this next phrase, praising God and enjoying the favor of all of the people. Now, when I read that, that says that the people here in Jerusalem went, I don't know about these people. They seem to be following this dead prophet, but they hang out here every day. They seem to be having a lot of fun doing it. They seem like a loving bunch. I kind of like them. And they enjoyed the favor of all the people. The church continues to grow like crazy. More and more people are adding. And then we come to Acts chapter 5. And there's this interesting thing that happens in Acts chapter 5. This couple, Ananias and Sapphira, drop dead in church. Now, I don't know about you, but the last time I looked into studies about church growth, I'm pretty sure have people drop dead in your church service is not in the top 10. It's not the way to get people to come to your church and to go, this looks like the place I want to be. God dealt with it. God is serious, as we talked on Friday night about the expectations for his church. But let's keep reading. So then in Acts 5, it says in verse 12, the apostles performed many miraculous signs and wonders among the people, and all the believers used to meet together in Solomon's colonnade. They kept coming. No one else dared join them. Well, duh. I mean, that doesn't take a lot to figure out, does it? If people start dropping dead this morning in this church service, I got an idea we're going to count the cost about whether we're coming back next Sunday, right? Verse 13, no one else dared join them, even though they were highly regarded by the people. People are like, I'm not sure what's going on over there, but I still think these people are amazing. I'm not sure about this, what we heard happened last week, but they're just amazing people. So much so, verse 14, nevertheless, more and more men and women believed in the Lord and were added to their number. So you tell me, what did these people see? That they just couldn't resist it. They saw these people coming together and loving in a way they'd never seen. And in spite of the things that were going on around them, they could not help but join them. By this, all men will know you are my disciples by your love for one another. Flip back, or at least it's on the same page in my Bible, to chapter 4 and verse 32. It says, all of the believers were one in heart and mind. Boy, what a way to describe a church right there. They are one in heart and mind. The word there, suke, which is in the NIV translated mind, it's probably not a great translation. The word in most translations is soul. Okay, they were one in heart and soul, and most of the other versions read that way. Soul is an interesting word. It's a hard word for us because there's not really a word in English that encaptures how all-encompassing the word soul is. We use, I'm with you, heart and soul, brother, but what does soul mean? Yes, it includes the mind, and that is what the NIV, we think alike, we're like-minded, but the soul is so much more than that. It is the seat of our will, our desire, our purpose. It's everything of the inner man, my goals, my desires. And the church is described in this passage as they were one in cardia, heart, and suke, soul. Well, let's stop and be honest. Does that describe most churches today? You see what a missed opportunity there is to say, you know what? We must be one in heart and soul, because that's how people are they're going to look and they're going to know Jesus. So let's do something. Let's fast forward here. Later on in the life of the church with a great man, Paul, because I believe Paul summarizes exactly what Jesus said, and he uses Jesus as the illustration of this. Because here's the question and the third thing that comes to my mind. And then what in the world had to change in these people? We saw Jesus' vision and we saw it happen. I mean, look at the life of the church, and over, people are just, I got to be a part of that. So what had to happen? Turn your Bibles to Philippians chapter 2. And I find three things here that I want us to think through in our own hearts. I want to be the church that people look at and go, I just don't get it. I don't know how that happens. I've never seen a love like that. Because that's Jesus' vision. But that probably means that Rick Overturf and that we got some things Just like the disciples that were right there with Jesus, they had to rethink and they had to change and they had to become different people in order for that to happen. So here's what Paul writes in Philippians chapter 2. I guess I'll start in verse 1, although we're going to key on verses 2 through 4. He says, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, any comfort from his love, and any fellowship with the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like, somebody said it over there, they're studying their Bible. The word there, suke, sold, like, cum suke, with sold, like sold, having the same love, being one in spirit and purpose. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. And then, by the way, he starts into that great passage and uses Jesus as the very illustration. So here's the first thing that I find. How do we and how did these guys become the church that the world would look at and go, that's Jesus? The first thing is individualism had to die. A whole section of 1 through 4 is about what? It's about humility. It's about, this cannot be about me. I believe personally that's one of the reasons. If you read the letters of Paul, and you see where Paul dealt with people who were individualistic, who were not being like-minded, wow, he had some strong things to say. People like Demas and Diotrephes and Euodia and Syntyche, and he calls these people by name, and he has some pretty direct things to say, because I think Paul understood that's what will kill a church. We've got to crucify the individualism. Now here's the part of this that just challenges me to death. I don't know, I was thinking earlier, maybe I've said this in my lifetime, but I can guarantee you it's not a regular thing. How about you? There's a phrase he says here in verse 3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourself. How do you do that? I don't think it's some trivial, oh bro, you're better than me. I think this comes out of a humility. That we know our own shortcomings, our own desperation before God, our own rescue from God. That as we look across this vast room and all these wonderful people, the only expression that could come out is every single person in this room is better than me. I got to be honest, I'm not sure that characterizes my heart and attitude. And yet Paul says that's the very key right there. Imagine a church where every person sees the church, interacts with the church from a point of view that says everybody else is better than me. I hope that makes you as uncomfortable as it does me. Because I got to remember the number of times in my life that I've started a conversation by saying, bro, you're so much better than I am. You know what I like to do? I like to go, well, I've been in the ministry 36 and a half years. I'll put my knowledge of the Bible up to most people. I'm going to stop right there. Imagine someone walking into your house church, someone walking into our teen group where there's come on, we know what it's like to be a teenager. Trying to put others down to put myself up. What if people walked into your house, your home, your church, and the first thing they felt was, these people think of each other totally more than they think of themselves, and that is so obvious. Think about the struggle that the disciples had. Who's going to be on the left? Who's going to be on the right? I'm better at this. I did this. Look at me. They had to learn that individualism had to die. And what did these men do? Man, they got faced with so many things that could have split the church and done this and done that. But where do we find them at the end? Still together, dying for the name of Jesus. There's only one way. A guy like a Peter or a James and a John could have done that. They took on the attitude of Christ, who left heaven humbled and emptied himself. Individualism had to die. There's a second thing that Paul says in Philippians 2. Verse 14. Do everything without complaining or arguing. Y'all are laughing with me, I know, or you're moaning, one of the two or both. So that you may become blameless and pure, children of God, without fault in a crooked and depraved generation. What makes us blameless and pure and all? Doing everything without complaining or arguing. But notice this next phrase. In which you shine like stars in the universe. There's that thought again. The world is going to look at you and they're going to go, there's a bright star in the world right there. It's called Triangle Church. You know why? Because everybody does everything. Well, most things, 80% of the time they do. No. Everything. Without complaining or arguing. Here's the way I paraphrase that. We value relationship above my position. Now, just very quickly, you understand that I'm not saying we should just acquiesce to someone who's trying to teach false doctrine or doesn't want to hold to truth. But let's just be real honest. How many times is that really the issue? A few. But isn't most of it our opinions? And we get so locked down in our opinions that my way's the way, and I don't know why they're doing it that way, that we end up losing the relationship because of our position. And again, I think about these men that followed Jesus, and they had to learn, you know what? It's more important about me staying there with Peter and us doing this together. Why does he get to preach the first sermon anyway? You know what? It's more important that I do everything without complaining or arguing. Because then we will shine like stars. If we bicker at one another, we pick at one another, we throw the zinger here or there because I feel something, then the world looks at us and goes, I've seen that. That doesn't make me want to. Oh, but when they walk into a room and they go, I don't know. There's a lot of different people with a lot of different opinions, right? We all got them. But somehow they overcome that. Is the picture of all these will know you're my disciples by your love for each other. And then finally, Philippians chapter 2, verse 2. We've already read it, but let me go back and read it again. Then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love and being one in spirit and purpose. And that is simply stated that the focus of purpose is essential. If we're going to show the world what love is, then we're going to have to be focused on the exact same purpose. Well, I'll just go ahead and offer up what you already know. The world is tugging at me and it's tugging at you for my attention at this issue and that issue and this thing going on and that thing going on. And it doesn't mean some of those things aren't good and right and important and all that. It's just going to be a distraction from the one purpose, and that is bring people to Jesus. And if that purpose isn't there, what in the world do you think really kept a lot of these men together? You know why? Because they had been beaten together. They'd been flogged together. They sat in a jail cell together. You know they had those moments where they said, why are we doing this? We're doing this because of the purpose Jesus gave us. And when we forget that, we're done. We're done. Purpose is essential. They got united about the one true purpose. Preach Jesus. Bring people to Jesus. And boy, how that just tends to smooth over so many other things when we are about the purpose. By this, all men will know you are my disciples, by your love for each other. You've got to do what I've got to do. I've got to look at me. That's all I can do. And go, Jesus, am I living what makes people go, hey, I don't know about that Rick Overturf guy. Maybe it's my neighbor. Maybe it's somebody I met but I've been to that church and I've seen the way those people love each other. I got to get some of that. Are you doing your part? Am I doing mine? They will know. Amen.